Our lunch panel.
Welcome us.
Welcome.
Okay. Oh, good. You can hear me now. Hello, everyone. So this is our lunch panel. We're going to be addressing big data, addressable media, and people-based marketing. We have some great panelists here. We have David Steinberg from Zeta Interactive, and we have Dea Lawrence from Variety. We have Damian Slattery from Sports Illustrated, and Ivan Wicksteed from Old Navy. They're going to introduce themselves and give a little bit of their background. But before they do, my name is Cynthia Johnson, and I'm the Director of Brand Development for American Addiction Centers. And I actually came to American Addiction Centers through an acquisition. So my background is in digital marketing specifically.
Hi, I'm David Steinberg, otherwise known as John Scully's partner. Founded this company on the premise that data was going to become important as it related to customer acquisition, retention, monetization, and the principle of Zeta is making data actionable, not using data for data's sake. It's my fifth company. I am a serial entrepreneur. As my mother would tell you, I couldn't get a job out of school, so I started one, and sold three, took one public, then sold that, now run this.
I'm Dea Lawrence, and I'm the CMO of Variety, but in my previous lives, I've run sales teams at tech companies. So I've sold big data, worked for AT&T. I've worked on programmatic platforms where we were pulling in third-party data segments. I've ran a team at PointRoll for 5 years where we were doing addressable creative, and that's my background.
Damian Slattery with Sports Illustrated. I am the writer on the data panel. I spent many years as a reporter at SI before I shifted to marketing at Time Inc. and some other brands, Time, Fortune, before coming back to SI about a year and a half ago. But Time Inc., 93 years old, has actually been a pioneer in data since its inception with decades and decades of subscriber data, but we've never really learned the lessons of how to use it. So hopefully we're at that point where we're turning that big ship around. So I'll talk more about that.
I'm Ivan, I'm the CMO at Old Navy, and I'm not saying this to be modest. I know less about this topic than anyone else on stage, probably in the audience actually. But I do know a little bit about people-based marketing because in our space, in the fashion industry, social and commerce are merging, so people-based marketing is a lot of what I do.
That's great. Well, I guess then, just to get started, maybe we just get an explanation from you on the key differences in first-party, second-party, and third-party data, and how reliable they are in variation.
Are you looking at me like
you
I should answer?
You specifically, or Dea can answer as well.
I'll talk about reliability. You can explain.
As you look at first, second, third-party data, it's just how do you secure your data? Do you get it yourself? Do you buy it from somebody who directly creates it, or do you buy it from a third party who buys it from a third party? Just like anything, the further you get on a concentric circle away from a customer, the less valuable it is. Right. That's not rocket science. So if you're looking at data that you can create, it's primarily going to be the most valuable. And the further you get away to second, third, we've even seen guys hawking fourth-party data at this point. It just gets less and less valuable because you're further and further away from a customer, and ultimately your goal is to create a transaction. Whether that transaction is a viewer tuning in, somebody buying something that you're manufacturing or you're selling a service, the closer you are from a concentric circle to your customer, the more valuable they're going to be, at least in my opinion.
I totally agree. That was our
Thank
argument
God.
at AT&T. We were like, we've got the first-party data. Why would you go elsewhere? But people still use third-party data. I'm just curious, how many people in this room are using third-party data right now? Right. So the majority of you still use third-party data. And there are lots of companies out there selling data, and I'm going to, talk from the perspective of when I was in sales and ran sales teams. You really have to vet the company that you're talking to and get a true understanding of where they're getting this data from, what is the methodology that they're using to collect the data, what type of privacy issues and how compliant are they, and what is the life cycle of this data, how are they refreshing it? And when you're vetting some of these companies, having run sales teams and listened to the sales rep in Chicago say one thing, the sales rep in New York say something else, the one in LA has a whole different story. You know, what is the story from the data company? What are they selling? And I think in order to determine whether a company has truthful data or whether their methodology is accurate, you got to keep asking questions. And I would ask questions from more than just that one salesperson sitting in front of you. I would talk to many, many people in the organization to get the true story. So I'm dubious on how reliable third-party data is. I would say stick with first-party data, and if you need to round it out with some other segments to make your first-party data more robust, I would go with that strategy.
Anyone else?
Next question.
Do you agree with that?
I can barely see
just
Damian
more-
over here.
I would just further point out to her
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
Third-party data is not bad. It's just not
can
as
be
good as
very
first
good.
or second-party
Right.
data. And how you use it becomes the important part, right? You might have 1 million customers in your database. You need 30 million customers to build the addressable audience.
Mm-hmm.
You can't spend enough money to create that big, your first-party data addressable audience. You're going to expand out, and then you'll use second and third-party data in those cases.
Right. And also in the DSPs, when you use a DSP, you've got, if you're not pulling the levers yourself and you're relying on the DSP to pull the levers for you, you've got a strategist or a planner who maybe graduated from college 6 months ago, and they are determining what data segments are going into your plan. And what knowledge and understanding do they really have of these data segments? They're going, oh, well, okay, soccer moms, okay, this, okay. And they're pulling these in, and you're paying for that. $2 CPM on here, $1.50 here, and it all starts adding up. But you're losing control when you hand this over to, you know, a 22-year-old that, do they really care about your business?
And that's why we think everybody should have their own DMP,
Yeah.
which is, which you can sit on your desktop and you can build your own audience and then determine it out of the data pools you want to select from.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. That was the next question. So I guess something that I know Dea and I think Ivan also wanted to address is what are the best practices in using dynamic addressable creative, and how do you do it without being creepy?
How do you do it without being creepy? You want me to talk about that? Okay. So, is anyone doing addressable creative right now? Yeah, not too many people. So I'm sure you've heard this line, because if I hear this line one more time, and I'm actually going to say it, you want to target the right person at the right time with the right creative, right? You want to make it relevant. Everybody's talking about this. So there's in having worked on the media side and on the creative side, there's a lot of talk about using data for media, but you also want to use the data to inform the creative, because what good is it to spend all this money and all this time planning out, stop this, okay, planning out all this, hold on, we're having a technical difficulty. Is there a member of IATSE here to fix my mic? No? Okay. So what good is it to plan out all this media and to do all this spend on data targeting when your creative doesn't match up? So what you can do is serve a shell. There are many companies out there that will do this. You pull in different elements. So let's say you have, if you're an auto manufacturer, you have 3 different cars with maybe 3 different color cars, different color backgrounds, different ways of personalizing the creative. So if I'm in Texas and I want to put blue bonnets in the background, and I want to pull in, the state of Texas emblem, and I want to have a much more colloquial type of messaging, you can do that. You can do, different background colors, different calls to action, different videos, and then you allow these to through multivariate optimization, which is a machine-based learning. All of these different elements spit out all these different variables. So instead of having to go back and create 10 different ads, you create a shell, pull in these elements, and you can spit out 30 different ads. The way of making this a little, it can be complicated once you get to the reporting side of this, right? So you want to try and limit the number of elements you're pulling in. But if you match that and overlay data on top of it, then the entire campaign becomes addressable.
Okay, good. And Ivan, I think I saw you trying to weigh in a little bit over there.
Well, I mean, like,
I think it's you. I'm gonna take my mic off.
can anyone hear me?
Yeah.
Yes? No? Yeah. You can hear me?
Okay.
So, like any fashion company, if you visit oldnavy.com and you look at a sweater or a shirt, and then later that day or that week you're on Facebook, you'll find ads being served up to you miraculously featuring that sweater or that shirt. So that is, one form of, addressable creative or tailored creative. But I was going to sort of broaden the conversation a little bit, because addressable creative, I think, is just a means to an end as far as I'm concerned. And addressable creative, the end goal is just content that people want to engage with, right? That's what we're all aiming for at the end of the day, is if you can serve up content that is meaningful to people, then they will engage it, and ideally they would share it or buy from it, or that your engagement metrics go up. So that's why I'm somewhat obsessed with the merging of social and content, right? So social and commerce right now, because that is really, you've got very engaged, highly engaged audiences that have already pre-opted into someone else's channel. And are very receptive to receiving messages from, like, effectively an intermediary, which is someone that they're following. So that sort of co-opting, or it would seem, it might seem odd for me representing a brand to say that I want an intermediary between me and my audience, but actually in the case of social media or social commerce, it actually makes a lot of sense.
Well, they're bringing you what you need, right? They're bringing you audience with intent. Because the great thing about social is, think about the fact billions of people now are willing to tell you everything about themselves for nothing more than attention from other people in their network. It's really an amazing situation. And we as marketers can access that information, use it to target them with the best possible offers. And that's where the intermediary becomes very valuable, because those people wouldn't come to oldnavy.com and tell them all of the things they're interested in. They might say, I'm interested in this sweater, but not all of the different attributes that you can get by going to a social media platform. Yeah. Unless you guys are much better than I thought.
Yeah, the worst case scenario is I'm on Facebook, or I'm following someone on Instagram, and you're serving me up ads that have absolutely no relevance to me, right? You're serving me up ads about women's, swim costumes. Best case is you're serving me up ads that are relevant to me and maybe relevant to something that I've recently been searching for. But the ideal situation is that the person that I'm actually engaging with is talking to me specifically about that thing. Yeah. And engagement rates obviously go through the roof when you get to that point.
I'm actually just curious if you're using any sort of influencer marketing with that, and how do you measure that data?
Like any fashion company, we have a relationship with a whole bunch of influencers, from sort of very well-paid influencers with a lot of reach to more emerging ones. So, you measure it through a suite of, all the regular tools, engagements. Obviously reach is a factor, but, engagement, and then increasingly it's intention to purchase. Right. Because the link between the content and the commerce is more direct, as these channels figure out how to deal more directly or honestly with what they're all about, which is really commerce.
And success comes back to attribution. And we deal at Zeta all the time with the full turnkey loop. We don't run marketing campaigns that we don't think we can't attribute back. But we come up against companies or talk to companies all the time where everybody's talking about intent or talking about mind share or build your brand. To us, the greatest thing about the digital ecosystem is attribution, the ability to truly attribute a transaction to a marketing campaign.
And I think that's something that I'm noticing anyway, becoming much more of a part of the conversation, that not every click-through is of equal value, right?
Correct.
If I've got a large following, but the following is not really qualified following, I've effectively bought that following. Right. I might be able to deliver you, 1 million click-throughs, but they're of very little value to me, because they're not really worth anything. They're not qualified click-throughs. So yeah, exactly. Attribution to sale is what it's all about.
That's why Google works.
Yeah.
I mean, they're the closest to a transaction of anybody. I mean, we'll talk about social media because it's such a big opportunity, but there's nobody closer to a transaction from an intent perspective than Google. People go to Google, intermediary, and say, I want to buy this, please show me stuff. And it's why campaigns need to go there.
That's extremely effective. Good for them. And so we sort of kind of treading into people-based marketing. And Damian, so recently Sports Illustrated has seen some great PR and lift because you have a plus-size model and all these things. And I'm just curious how that sort of impacted your strategy and the information coming back from those people.
Well, it's a little early to read just how much impact what Cynthia's referencing is we had our swimsuit issue last week, and for the first time ever, Sports Illustrated produced 3 different covers with 3 different models and 3 different body types. A traditional swimsuit model, a plus-size model, and Ronda Rousey, a iconic figure.
Can you tell us what the sales figures were?
We don't know yet.
Did you produce equal numbers of all 3?
A third,
So I
2
was wondering,
subscribers,
so you didn't do like
and new
90%
sales.
of the swimsuit model and then 5% of everybody.
Off the record, we debated that, but in the end, we chose to go a third.
Interesting.
They were all
And-
available at JFK when I took off.
All 3.
All 3.
Which one did you buy?
I did not buy one.
Well, if you buy the one at newsstand, you can actually get the cardboard viewer for our new 3D virtual reality video that is also part of the new Swim app that makes it a very engaging experience, high touch, as they say. But some of the things, actually, I wanted to step back and say some of the things that Time Inc. is doing. I referenced the legacy of Time Inc., and today we have 120 million print subscribers and print buyers that we have real data on, 150 million visitors to our 60 plus websites globally, and we've been sitting on that kind of scale for quite a while, but it's only in the last year and then in the last month that Joe Ripp, our CEO, has made a couple of significant moves, hiring the company's first ever chief data officer, JT Kostman, who has great experience in data and is working very hard to productize that great scale that we have. And then just about 10 days ago or so, the company bought Viant, a leading people-based marketing firm. And you might have seen the headline that we bought MySpace. You had to go past that to the fact that we bought Viant. So those are really exciting moves for us because we know how much most of you in this room need us to provide you that kind of service and that kind of execution so that you have that great consumer experience, customer experience that John Scully spoke of last night. And we can do that with all that insight and information and targeting and deliver the ROI that some of our traditional approaches was kind of pray for the results. But now this is hopefully puts us into a league where we can compete with the other big players and deliver the results. So that the rate card isn't out there yet, but be patient.
I'm actually interested, I don't know, the marketing cloud that comes with Viant, and they've said before they have the capability of tracking online ad exposure to offline purchases. Is that something that will be start rolling out?
I believe so. I reread the announcement last night, so we're still the purchase isn't final. So we haven't gotten the internal download on how we will trickle it down, how we'll sell. So still a lot to learn, but I actually wanted to mention another really exciting thing back to the Sports Illustrated brand, and that is another announcement that's been made in the last year. I think it was in July, Sports Illustrated Play. Sports Illustrated Play is a new enterprise under our brand that is, in a nutshell, 3 companies coming together to become one new one that is all youth sports league management software. So we want to tap that space as kind of the future. I think there are 8 million players in all the various leagues, lacrosse, baseball, and other sports that were legacy accounts from those original 3 companies, and new business that the SI Play management has won. So that will allow us 8 million players, 9 million players, hundreds of thousands of teams, thousands of leagues to capture all the data for kids 5 to 15. The data that matters most in their lives: hits, runs, strikeouts, touchdowns, you name it, and to communicate with them in the most personal, people-based way as they grow. So that is a data opportunity that we're really excited about and hope will propel SI into a new place in the lives of young kids and young families. So.
That's great. Good for you. Fantastic. That kind of spirits into another topic, which is the security of this data. And is there a fear as we're sort of moving into capturing data from young children and taking it into their lives in the future that you're going to, or we'll all run into some sort of compliance issue in the future, or that we're misusing that data, or we lose that data?
Data security is the single biggest issue anybody in any industry that ever touches data deals with on a minute-by-minute basis. People say to me all the time, our company is 22 offices on 4 continents, 850 enterprise clients, over half in the Fortune 500, or over half in the Fortune 1000, I should say. Say, what keeps you up at night? I always say data security, right? It's literally the one thing that can destroy a company overnight. And it's not just somebody hacking into you, it's some rogue employee taking something, or some employee digging. We have a 350 million active person database with over 3,000 cells of data per person, including demographic, psychographic, and behavioral. God forbid somebody goes in and targets an individual. Just an employee decides, I want to look up my boyfriend or look up my girlfriend, and does something inappropriate. So it is the single biggest issue I think any company that touches data will deal with and grapple with, as Target has found out, as numerous companies have found out.
Like Sony. Yes, like
Sony. Maybe Pascal lost his job over it.
Well, we know dealing in that 5 to 15-year-old space, that has to be job one. A killer product, but a safe and secure one, so that data is as secure as it can be, while being able to push out the stats that the families will care about, grandma will care about, the standings, the directions, and you name it. But that's absolute priority.
Yeah, I know I work with HIPAA compliance issues all the time, and so we have a lot of employees that have access to patient data. And we actually just started working with, I don't know how it'll go yet, but a company out of New York, Joseph Steinberg. It's a company called Secure My Social, and I guess data leaks on social are supposed to take over the amount. Like normally it was file sharing, and now it's supposed to be social media. Data leaks are the #1 sort of problem out there. So yeah, we'll see how that works out. I guess going back a little bit to the creative side, maybe you could speak to some of the things that you've done to serve up, this addressable media.
That was 2006, 2005. So addressable creative's been around for a very, very long time, and I think the next step in this is addressable television. I'm going to turn that mic off. Is this one on? Yeah. So is to make the television ads addressable as well. So that this is, I would think, the next big thing is to how does that happen. But in terms of best practices, is that what you're asking me?
Right.
Yeah. So I would say that if you're going to go off with an addressable creative campaign, start small. Don't think, use as few images as possible. Be really smart with the video. Make sure you have video in it. Make sure you have people in the ad because it performs better. And be very limited and start very small, but use great volume. When I say small, I don't mean the size of your campaign. You've got to do it with a big campaign or it won't work. Like if you're going to try and do this with 10 million impressions, it's not going to work. You've got to go out with a big buy, like 100 million impressions, minimum 50 million impressions, and then you've got to run it for at least 2-3 months in order to get the learnings. And then you have to keep checking in with the reporting and also have the ability to not just let the machine optimize for you, but also be able to go in and optimize the creative yourself. I think that, and make sure you choose the right vendor, because there's a lot of vendors out there, I'm going to keep saying this, that say they have technology that works, but they don't. Right? Some of the technology works and some of it doesn't work. So just make sure you really vet the vendor and do a test with them before you go and put all this money up front into a campaign.
Yeah, do you think that, or what is your forecast for how soon, or if will TV ever be completely?
Oh, I definitely think it's going that way.
It's already there. If you know how to buy it. Most of our clients use the digital learning to figure out what ads to buy where and place on TV. Because you can use the digital ecosystem as your learning environment to then place your online and TV media. We've seen clients who've run video in email hit off of a Super Bowl ad the next day, hit a larger addressable audience via email the day after the Super Bowl versus running their Super Bowl ad. Just because they understood the exact demographic and they were able to do it backwards. And we did that for T-Mobile, who's a client of ours last year, and we did it for a client this year who I can't name. But it's interesting to me that it starts with video really taking over. I don't know what year it's going to be, but in the next 5 to 10 years, video will be larger from a dollar perspective than any other media buying on the internet. So that literally becomes a crossover with television. And ultimately, millennials, and I forget the name of the generation before them, somebody could probably tell me, or after them, I should say. But Z, thank you. I knew they just named it a couple weeks ago. But they're on the internet 5 times more than they're on TV. So they're actually making their buying decision by watching video on the internet, not watching it on television. As I think John pointed out last night, he started out in an ecosystem with 3 networks. We now have hundreds of networks. And it's very difficult to get to centralized buying if you don't use that knowledge that you're building. At least that's what I've seen.
I've been at Old Navy for 3 years. When I started, we were spending about 75% of my total budget on traditional media, on TV, and now it's just under 40%. Yeah. And it probably won't go, it's going to continue to go down a little bit, but it's about where it needs to be actually right now. And where that money has gone is into video, a lot of video content, and more sort of addressable media, channels, just because the audiences are now there at sufficient scale and it's measurable. I gave a talk on this once, so I was invited to talk at the upfronts, and I was comparing the upfronts to like a Victorian tea dance. You sort of the channels are sitting around waiting for someone to fill in their dance card in the hope that 9 months from now that this audience might miraculously appear, which is there's a lot of ifs in that sentence, and so the idea that you can deliver video, pre-roll or whatever it is, to a qualified audience and then measure whether or not they actually watched it and how much of it they watched. And if they bought from it is a lot more compelling because you know what you're getting for your money.
Yeah, I read just the other day that Snapchat's hit 7 billion daily video views, which just surpasses Facebook at this point. And their videos are vertical. And do you think that'll have an impact on delivery with this new generation coming up? They're used to recording a certain way and watching a certain way.
Well, kind of as I think John touched on last night, the video disappears, right? It's not there. I think the Viacom deal that they just struck with Snapchat, which gave them one of the largest sales forces overnight, is going to be the game changer for Snapchat. If you think about what they're doing, Snapchat is effectively, you look at kind of the millennials, and then you look at the generation, the Zs, and then you look at the generation before them. Each generation gets effectively more finite in how it consumes and saves content. So my generation was used to, I still, when I Snapchat, so my kids can see I'm sort of cool, I save it. Like there's a functionality where you can push the button and save the roll. And literally my kids they'll go through my camera and they'll be like, why are you saving these? Like, who cares? And I'm like, just hit save, right? And so space is unlimited. You could save it how you want. Their generation, which is the Z generation, doesn't even care to watch it more than once. So, how does an advertiser insert themselves into that? It's very, very, very difficult.
It requires a lot more content. Yeah. The amount of content that my team is producing now relative to, just even 18 months ago is 5x, maybe even 10x what it was producing. I mean, which means you have to have different skill sets on staff, and you just need to produce a lot more content. So your production values come down somewhat, but you just need a lot more of it.
Yeah, that ends up being the thing. Is how do we create this? Like there are companies that have entire teams dedicated to Snapchat, and that's it. That's all they do all day. So keeping up with that would probably be very difficult. Variety's creating Snapchat content.
We do. We could create tons of content. I mean,
yeah,
that's what we do. We create content all day long.
Are you able to? I mean, are there systems in place to measure that?
No. So here's the system. How many did we look at the views on Facebook? I mean, we're looking at this ourselves. We just started getting into Snapchat. So the data that we are actually using, we have our own first-party data. We only use first-party data. And we have not applied that to Snapchat yet because we just started snapping. And you can't, right. There's nothing, right. But we haven't applied it to any social, really. I mean, but we really have only been, I mean, we'll do, if we do some buys in Facebook, we'll use their data to target like everybody else does. But in terms of data, the only thing we do with our data is we own a lot of properties. We own Women's Wear Daily and Hollywood Life and Deadline. We target across all of the publications that we buy, and we retarget just the way you do that. I'm sure everybody does it the same way. But it's limited. I mean, and we have to be careful because of who our users are. I mean, Steven Spielberg reads Variety. We have, so we have to be very careful with what we do with our data.
I mentioned it in one of the morning meetings that Sports Illustrated just did a Snapchat live with the charter jet that Jeff used to be on a regular basis with all the swimsuit models. 20 swimsuit models and about 20 middle-aged executives. They cut out the executives from the Snap, but that was a huge success, and we found sponsors. We co-sold it with them. Results we don't know yet. No metrics shared from them yet, but for a media brand, it's a terrific opportunity. For our sponsor, Miller Coors, Smith & Forge, their cider was created custom creative that was really smart, and we'll see what the engagement was, but it was a great first go for us.
They bring a lot of views, although you could not have run that ad with that sponsor on Facebook because they don't allow alcohol. Right. So you get creative, around doing that, and it sounds like it was a really creative use of content.
And the Snapchat producer was there on the flight helping handcraft the product.
You're looking at it.
She.
I'm just kidding.
So sorry, I'm still laughing. So now you have all this data, and you're going on Snapchat, and we have all this user information, and we were talking a little bit earlier, Ivan. How do you take that information to build these ads, and how are you looking at the data to make sure that your creatives are effective, or will be?
Well, I don't really like to think of it like ads, I think of it more like content, and then, you just look at whether or not the content is being, looked at, engaged with, watched in its entirety, because a lot of video is, it's a video generation, but a lot of video spikes in the first 5 seconds and then drops off. So are they actually watching it through to completion? And then are they doing something as a result of that? And then what is it exactly that they're doing as a result of that? Are they sharing it? Are they buying from it? So, all of those metrics. But, go back to the point I made earlier. I think at the end of the day, you're just trying to produce content that people find sufficiently compelling and relevant, which means it needs to have sufficient entertainment value. He's in a very advantageous position of having great entertainment value. So it gets shared, no doubt. I'm sure that content gets shared through the model's own social networks and then through people who follow them. So it's kind of, we really are now at a point where the scale that you can reach with that. I mean, I'll give you an example. We did a campaign for Back to School at Old Navy where we made a music video effectively, and we partnered with Awesomeness TV, who have access to a lot of emerging YouTube talent. People that you may not have heard of, they might not be household names, but when they show up in a place, it gets closed down quickly, They have a sort of a rabid audience, and so we produced the content with them. It was a music video, basically. It was made by them, featuring them, singing and acting in the music video, and they distributed it. And it very, very quickly, I think within 5 days, got to 10 million views, and the engagement was crazy. And it's hard to buy 10 million views, actually, especially 10 million views of when you're talking about a 3 or 4 minute piece of content. Be very extremely expensive to buy that on television.
We got 10 million views on something that we did as well, and because we have access to the red carpet, we plugged into the Golden Globes camera, and so we were in the press junket room after Jennifer Lawrence won the Golden Globe, and everybody else in the room was busy putting these clips up on television, and we put it up. We used technology where we could edit very quickly and get the clip up. It was the clip where she was saying to this foreign reporter, he couldn't speak English very well, and she admonished him for being on his phone, and then he made a reference to the Oscars, and she said, "We're at the Golden Globes, and if you'd get off your phone, you'd know that." So that got 10 million views in just in a few days, more than any of the content that we were able to produce on our own. Those snackable moments are what people want to see.
That's what Snapchat was made for, right?
Right, it's that snackable moment. But then how does that get back to data? I mean, we have no data. We don't know who watched it. We don't know.
Well, you could if it was off your site. I mean, you could track who was coming on.
Right, but it was
URL.
it was through social media.
I understand. I'm just saying. So part of what the evolution is plugging into Facebook's API, right? If you plug into their API through Atlas and that platform, you can figure out the demographics of the people who are viewing that, and they will then allow you to target people who might have viewed that video. They just won't give you their name. So you can build an audience around those people, which could be very valuable for you to sell back to advertisers.
Can you help me do that? Is that what you're saying?
Tom can. But Tom runs our Zeta Exchange platform. But the reality is that if you look at what we're talking about here, I think Ivan and Sports so right in that you're producing entertainment, whether you're selling clothing, magazines, or cruises. I'm kidding. Whether you're selling any of those things, it's about creating entertainment and creating content that people want to share. To his point, to buy 10 million views on 2 to 3 minutes would be so cost prohibitive, whether you tried to do it anywhere, right? You could drive traffic to a YouTube site, or you could try to buy it on the internet. Whereas if you create the right content, you're going to drive it. The thing that I find very interesting is all of these companies that are saying they're saving so much money on their marketing are now doubling what they used to spend on content creation and are just not looking at it right. So
I think YouTube announced recently, a few weeks ago, that they're, and I don't really understand what they meant by this because I didn't read the article all the way through, but they're making everything shoppable on YouTube. All content will be shoppable, so I guess they're opening their API up. I do think that that is a trend that Snapchat and everyone else will be following. So I think you're going to really see these two worlds really coming together, especially in the world of video, that shoppable, everything that you see basically will be immediately, you'll be able to sort of immediately click through either directly to your site or to a third party, which means that obviously that's then very valuable, right? Because it's measurable and it links directly to a sale, so attribution is higher.
yeah, I mean, if you think about how it comes together, the ability to make the video dynamic and clickable based on content in it is really the next generation, right? It's starting to happen. Yeah. What they're doing now is they're allowing you to self-say, okay, so when this photo is up as this part of the video, this is the clickable link, and you're putting it in there. It's the same way MSN and Yahoo used to publish content. So a publisher would put up an article, and they would have to pick 3 ads to put alongside of it as a part of it. This was 10 years ago. Now it's dynamic, right? The Taboola figures out what you want based on what you're reading and looking at, and then it automatically publishes it. Video's going in the same direction.
Yeah. I mean, you used to be able to buy, I know I looked into the figures once, that I think the highest rating when they invented the rating system for television was I Love Lucy. It was back in the early 60s. And it was in the high 60s, which means that almost 70% of all Americans with a television, which is all Americans, were watching that show at that exact same time, right, on a Tuesday night. Yeah. And now, I think it's Monday Night Football is pretty much as good as it gets, right? And that's like a 10, 11%. A high-rated show, if you get 1, 2% now, people are getting really excited about that. That's like a successful show, is a 2% rating. That would have been called flame out back then.
Cancel. Well, you've got events now, right? I mean, we've got the Super Bowl. I was lucky enough, I was on the Today Show the day after the Super Bowl doing the recap of who won and lost the commercials with Matt Lauer and Savannah. And you've got Puppy Monkey Baby and an ultrasound for Doritos that the cost of the ad pales in comparison to the YouTube return, right? So you get tens of millions of views on these ads off of that one event. I Love Lucy used to be that event every week.
Yeah.
We're going to go into Q&A in just a minute, but I wanted to touch on something. Do you think that branded content, so web series and so on, will be the future? So sort of take the advertising right out of it?
I mean, I think it's all branded content because that's how, brands, almost always, if you see compelling content, there's some brand behind it. Someone's paid for it. And when I say a brand, Kim Kardashian is a brand, right? A very powerful brand. So, I mean, it's all branded content, but 90% of what you see is branded content. So, it's here.
There you go.
Look at, this show, The Amazing Race, just came on. My daughters were so freaked out that 2 YouTube stars are now on The Amazing Race. Like, I said, have you ever watched The Amazing Race? No, don't care. But I love this woman on YouTube, and she's on The Amazing Race. It's going the other way.
They did. They had a YouTuber on what was it, Dancing with the Stars, and they have the highest ratings they've ever had. He'll never get voted off, So here we are. So we're going to open up the room for Q&A. Does anyone want to start us off? Questions?
We were that good. No questions whatsoever. So if you look at our clients, we set up a DMP for each one of them. And that DMP runs testing every 5 minutes of every day. So we believe that the data actually creates its own answers, right? And you've got to be able to pivot, and you've got to be able to move your campaign and move your creative, to everybody's point, based on actual conversion rates and rates that people utilize. And we would say that you could look at a campaign of 20 or 30 million people. In our world, that's hundreds of micro campaigns. It's not one individual or 3 individuals or 5 individuals. So no human can look at the amount of data that StubHub needs to move through to create the velocity that you want for your business in any given day, right? But you can build a platform that can build collars around it, which are acceptable ratios of how data performs, and then utilize those collars to create red flags, we would say. So red, green, yellow. If a campaign's in green, keep it going, try to scale it. Yellow, humans get involved, right? How do we make this better? Red, you should probably kill that particular campaign and then move on to the next one. You're going to be very lucky because you're so event-driven, right? You have so many different events that can really excite so many different demographics. You have a lot of different things to play with. I mean, at least that's how we would look at it. I don't think a human can do that. I mean, I'd turn it over to the rest of the group.
I find it difficult to have a holistic view of all the data that you need. There was a session in a company this morning talking about the importance of having a dashboard where you can bring all of that stuff together and do data visualization with it so that you can get a quick and easy read of how things are tracking. But it's difficult to get all that in one place. I go to my social team for the metrics on how social's performing, and the media team for media and advertising performance and brand awareness. The data's all over the place, and there's too much of it. So it's definitely a problem getting it all into a sort of a format that you can wrap your brain around on a daily basis.
Ultimately, Ivan, you can put a DMP in place that can build one dashboard for you.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, when our clients use our DMPs, they don't run the vast majority of their marketing through our platform. They import it to look at the reporting.
Yeah.
Because you can't. I mean, marketing has to be run in so many different disparate places to make it effective.
Could you talk a little bit about your thoughts on the role of creative in all of this? You mentioned having to give up a little bit on production value to manage the scaling of the volume of content, and you can cut, slice and dice campaigns into lots of pieces and put them back together. But we still continue to see on my business the power of creative. And whenever we do test something, unfortunately, we learn something that makes it even more work for our team, right? So, there is that role, and I struggle to marry the parts of my organization that are very data-driven that also have to develop winning creative, and spanning that chasm. Great.
Are you doing a lot of A/B testing, or how are you testing your creative?
Historically in my business and are today, yes.
And
Not as much as we would like to do because
yeah.
we continually learn that we don't know the answer. And
Right.
we're often wrong.
I like to say there's some things you can measure and some things you can't measure, and that's okay. That's just the way the world is. So, I mean, you can drive yourself crazy trying to measure why creativity works in the way that it does. So it's like me trying to quantify why I prefer the color of this wallpaper to another wallpaper. By the time you've understood it, you'll have moved on to the next creative project. So I'd say produce a lot of it. Don't be afraid to release it. And just constantly, obviously if it's not working, if you're not getting any engagement with it, take it down or move on and do something else. But you just got to be not afraid to take some risks, I think, when it comes to producing creativity, because that's the world we live in. People expect a lot of content, and you need to be providing them with a lot of content to be relevant, and that has implications that it's not all going to be good, but that's okay.
Quite frankly, we would say the data quantifies whether the creative was good or not, right? Because if you don't have creative in marketing, data is totally irrelevant. So, but you've got to be fast to pivot. You've got to pick the stuff that wins, run with it, and take risk.
But I also think the conversation with creative and media, it has to take place in the same room. So we said this in another session, that the media agencies in one part of the country and the creative agencies in the other part of the country. And when I was at Point Roll, we would go and do these end campaign summary reports and sit in the room, and people would go, oh, can I see the creative? Like, you're the head of marketing, you didn't see the creative? And they didn't. And it didn't just happen once, it happened repeatedly, so that we got into the habit of, here, we would start the presentation with, here's the creative that you ran. Oh, that's really cool. And it was shocking, and you would think it seems very fundamental that you would have the media people talking to the creative people, and in your organization you would have the data people talking to the creative people. Here is how the creative performed. So the next time we do this, we might want to think about, you know, X, Y, and Z.
Question back there?
Yeah, Rex Briggs from Marketing Evolution, and a partner to Timing for doing a lot of the big data analytics across a lot of the different parts of the business. And I'm interested in the group's view whether we will see a shift in privacy from this idea that we have to be very careful about who we market to and the addressable releases and more and more of that today, to a point where the bird is actually on the market where we're expected to be using personally identifiable direct data, so that Pepsi, for example, can avoid advertising to diabetics, or Miller Coors can avoid advertising on their age. Do you see that we might see it actually flip to the other side, where the expectation is we do actually go more towards addressable, personally identifiable information to be more socially responsible in our advertising?
I think the answer is yes. I think it's all a question of timing. I think people have to get used to it, and I think it's going to be permission-based. I think to Ivan's point earlier, the consumer is much better off if you're showing them what they want to see on Facebook than something that is so foreign from them that it doesn't matter to their life. And I think that people will continue to get more and more comfortable with advertisers doing this. Now, the flip side is you've got ad blockers out there, right? And that's kind of the elephant in the room for a lot of people here. As you think about it, you'll have a component of people that are saying, give me more based on what I really want, and you'll have a component of people who are checking out completely and saying, I'm not interested in any ads, which of course will then affect the content provider pretty heavily.
And I think, like me personally, there's some brands that I want to hear from them all the time and want them to serve up content to me. And then there's a whole bunch of brands, maybe 99% of the rest of the brands, that I never want to hear from. So it's opt-in, right?
Right.
It's permission-based marketing. So I can imagine a future where when I get a new phone, as part of the the setup process, I get to opt in to receive for certain brands to know where I am at any point in time, right? Because they know, everyone knows that they can follow you anyway. And if I'm walking past Burberry, or anyway within striking distance of Burberry, yes, I want them to invite me in, give me a glass of champagne, and show me all their latest stuff. I would like that. I would actually appreciate that, but I don't want any other brands to do that to me. So I think this generation is very different. This is a generational gap issue. This generation is completely comfortable with the idea of permission-based marketing, and they expect it, actually. So privacy issues for them are not really a concern. It's actually old fogies like myself that get worried about it.
So I think actually, I have a question. I think we're actually going to have to wrap it up.
That's your question?
That was my question, yes, it's rhetorical.